welcome everybody. We are so happy to have Professor Johansson and Davida here tonight.
We want to talk about what does it mean that it is a functional impairment. So, Prof, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw you straight in there.
Let's start with electrohypersensitivity. And please excuse me, I will look sideways because I have some notes on my laptop here. When we talk about functional impairments, it's good to remember that we used to call it handicap, but then it was changed to disability, and then it was changed to functional impairment. And since then, and this is the work of the United Nations actually, nowadays it's progressed into functional variation, functional variability, and functional diversity. And I'm sure they will come up with new names soon again. But this is very important, regardless of the term, and I use functional impairment because that is what's used here in Europe and further on around the world. It's important to realize that electrohypersensitivity is not an illness. It is a relevant, correct, and completely right avoidance reaction to an inferior environment. And this is the basis really for the United Nations declaration regarding functional impairments, that it's nothing wrong with the person, it's the environment that needs to be, should we say, treated. The treatment for the environment comes in the form of so-called accessibility measures. And for electrohypersensitivity, those would be distance to source, shielding of, for instance, cables, equipment, and so forth. What we call electrosanitation, that you remove various sources in the environment. And sometimes also you need to completely block the radiation from a distant source. When it comes to the symptoms, the Nordic Council of Ministers, and this was the same year as electrohypersensitivity was recognized, namely 25 years ago, the year 2000, and they were then classifying the symptoms of electrohypersensitivity as an occupationally related symptom-based diagnosis according to the ICD-10, which today would be the ICD-11. And that means that an electrohypersensitive person can be treated by a medical doctor. They could get sick leave from the workplace as well as economic compensation. But it's always the underlying cause is the inferior, or should we say toxic, environment. And it's with complete accessibility measures as the treatment. Of course, you're sorry?
Yeah, I just want to add to what you're saying is and why this is so significant for the medical doctors that's in this webinar today. The first question that medical doctors ask is, how do I test for electrohypersensitivity? And we know that Belpom has, and some of his colleagues have developed certain test, I want to say protocols. But I think what we are saying, and this is why the functional impairment is so important. If your environment is ill, it's not the person that's ill. And we're going to talk about the symptoms and the impact on a person's health in a moment and why it is so difficult to actually assess. But the easiest way to test if somebody is electrohypersensitive is, like Prof says, remove the trigger, like we've been taught in integrative medicine, and see what happens. So it's a sick environment. It's not a sick person.
Yeah, very, very, very correct. And of course, as a medical doctor, when you meet a person coming to your treatment ward, your healthcare unit, your office, sometimes and quite often, the person, him or herself, are not aware of the possibility of electron hypersensitivity. They present a number of symptoms, and we will come back to that later on, and they are not aware at all of what is causing it. And of course, as a medical doctor, you have to take all the relevant clinical tests to rule out an underlying treatable disease, which could manifest itself very much like electron hypersensitivity. And I often hear from medical doctors that they run all these tests, and at the end of the day, they haven't pinpointed at all what kind of illness it could be, and therefore they don't have a treatment, and they get desperate. And then it's tempting to think as a medical doctor that maybe it's something wrong in the head of the person. They are imagining their symptoms or not, but most likely they are not. They do have a reaction to the environment. And if we had like a week to talk, then we could go through all the scientific data where you can connect clinical symptoms of electrohypersensitivity with very detailed scientific analysis. And so they rhyme very much together. But we don't have time for that now. So the treatable disease has to be ruled out first.